In this video, we're going to discuss port security, which is used to provide a level of authentication in an Ethernet environment. In a wired Ethernet environment, as an example, there's nothing stopping you simply plugging in your PC into any open port in the network. So as an example, there's nothing stopping a user connecting their PC to a port in a director's office, which then results in them having access to the director's VLAN. There's also nothing stopping a user connecting a wireless access point to the network and allowing multiple users to access the wired network through that wireless access point. That's a major security risk. What port security does is it looks at the source MAC address of frames received on a port, and you can restrict the frames allowed on a specific port to either a single MAC address that you configure or to a limited number of MAC addresses that are dynamically learnt. There are various options which we'll discuss, but as an example, you could say on the port that connects to the director's office, only the MAC address associated with their laptop or their PC is allowed to send frames to the switch and therefore belong to the director's VLAN. Or you could limit the number of MAC addresses allowed on a port. As an example, you could limit the number of MAC addresses to 1, which would only allow a single PC to access the network through that port. Or if you have a PC connected to an IP phone, you may limit the MAC addresses to 3, 2 for the IP phone and 1 for the PC attached to the IP phone. That would stop a user connecting an access point or a hub to the network and allowing multiple unauthorized devices access to the Ethernet network. Please note, this is not user authentication. User authentication can be implemented using 802.1x. This is a more basic authentication based on MAC addresses. So only frames from specific MAC addresses are allowed, or a limited number of MAC addresses are permitted on a port on a switch. That solves the issue of a user connecting to a port that they're not authorized to connect to, or stopping a user connecting a hub or wireless access point to the network, and therefore allowing unauthorized access to the network. You can decide what happens when there's a violation of port security. You could simply drop the frames, or you could shut the port down using what's called an error disable state. In the most secure implementation where you error disable the port, you as an administrator have to manually re-enable the port. So the user would have to contact the help desk as an example and explain that they no longer have access to the network, and then you could investigate what happened, and you'd be able to see if an unauthorized MAC address or group of MAC addresses have tried to access the network through that port.